All right. Hello, everybody. My name is Savannah Harrison. I am the Student Affairs Manager at the College of Creative Studies. I'm also referred to as the lead advisor. And part of my role is to advise students on college requirements. And so that can be college requirements as far as like GEs, right? All CCS students have GEs. But some of it is also connecting you up with the broader resources of UCSB and helping you navigate just the processes of being a student here at CCS. My colleague Megan is not able to be here today, but she does much of the same roles for students. And so we're a team that helps support students through their time at CCS. Go ahead, Chloe.
I am Chloe. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I am a second year here in CCS Writing and Lit. And I'm a double major in environmental studies through letters and sciences. So if you guys are thinking about double majoring, we can talk about that. And I wrote here, but it says ... but it should say playwriting and poetry, which is most of what I do. You know, in CCS, you can like experiment in all the genres, do all the things. Is there anything else I'm supposed to say, Savannah?
No, you're all good.
All right, I'm Michelle. I use she, her, hers pronouns as well. I'm a fourth year, graduating in the spring, this quarter in like 5 weeks. I'm primarily a poet and a creative nonfiction writer, so I write a lot of personal essays, and I have a chapbook that's about completed that are going to be my final portfolio. So I know that's kind of looking far ahead, but if you guys want to talk about what kind of the culmination of the major will be for you, we can talk about that. I'm also a minor in the writing program for professional editing. So if you want to talk about the writing minor and the potential, you know, things about that, I'm also a resource for that.
So I'm Vivien. I also go by she, her, and I'm a third year. I am obviously in CCS, and I'm also an art history minor. So minoring in LMS. Happy to give info about that. And I write a lot of nature stuff. If I write in any genre, it usually connects to nature somehow. So I guess my big term would be nature writer, but I mainly focus on poetry and fiction. Right now I'm working on a novel for my senior project, and I am pretty involved in lots of fellowships and stuff. So hopefully I could be helpful to discussing, you know, research, grants, fellowships, stuff like that.
Thanks for the introductions, everybody. So I want to let everyone know just before we get too started in questions, the chat window is open. So if you have questions that you want us to elaborate on that like fit in with the flow of conversation, we can integrate that. We can answer questions like on the side while other people are talking. We can do all kinds of stuff. So we're pretty solid multitaskers, I think, these days. Anyway, so our first official question that we'll jump into is really at the heart of like College of Creative Studies, right? And as writing and literature majors, like for you guys, the creative studies part actually is kind of not too far afield from like what you do as far as general understanding, right? The heart of the College of Creative Studies is the idea that you are here to create new knowledge, to create your own research and your own kind of independent work and really do that advanced work that's spurred on by your own interests. For other majors, creative, right, may not mean creative in terms of like art and writing and music. It may mean like I'm creating new biology and I'm creating new chemistry. So that's kind of the overarching theme of our college and what ties the majors together. And so the question for you guys is, you know, what is your space within that creative studies, right? What are the creative activities that you are currently involved in, and when did you start them in the college?
Should we continue to go alphabetically?
You can do whatever you want. If you have sort of burning desires to go first, but alphabetically works too. Whatever is kind of organic for you guys.
I can talk a little bit on this. So the great thing about CCS and about UCSB in general, but especially CCS, is that in my 4 years, I've been involved in like almost countless things. Like I can't really, I'm trying to like think of everything, and it's really hard because you know, my second year I was editor-in-chief of Spectrum, which is the literary journal here at CCS. And I've been working on Word Magazine my entire 4 years, which is a publication through the Interdisciplinary Humanities Department about life in Isla Vista. So those are like the two biggest projects I've worked on that I've used the skills, you know, that I learned in CCS classes to really take that into my own direction, and you know, use publishing classes at CCS to become a better editor and things like that. And then in terms of like my own little niche, my senior portfolio and project centers around writing about sex and BDSM and kind of like taboo topics and healing from trauma. And so I do a lot of research and collect craft essays about sex writing and work with faculty mentors on that. And that's been kind of in the latter half of my time at CCS. And I've gotten great support from various like mentors throughout the college. It's almost hard to pick who's been my like main mentor, because everyone does different work and you get to know their work really personally through CCS. And so you get to kind of decide who you want to help you along your journey. So.
Yeah, so I can go next. That's a big question because I feel like I'm always doing lots of random creative stuff. I guess the big activity that I do is what's my senior capstone project. So that's the final project we have to turn in at the end of CCS. And for that project, I'm doing a novel. So I spend a lot of time working on my novel. And that's not to totally overwhelm you. You do not have to write a novel. That was a personal torture I chose for myself. And I also do the Rob Writing Fellowship, and that is a really awesome fellowship that you can do where you're plugged into a community of other undergrad writers, and you kind of just work in small groups and work with each other and edit each other's work. And at the end, you do a little symposium type presentation of what you've worked on. So I do that working on my novel as well. I also did a quarter on Catalyst, and I'm hoping, which is the it's the literary magazine in the College of Letters and Science. So I am hoping also to hopefully become an editor role in that next year. I'm applying this quarter for that. You know, just all sorts of stuff. I write poetry, I take lots of workshops. Yeah, always doing creative things.
I can elaborate a bit more. I think I'm the youngest of the people in this panel. So I'm at the stage where last quarter I pitched what my senior capstone project is going to be. So the projects that they're talking about that are like all polished and they've been working on for a while. The first step of that is, it was virtual this time, but the concept is we're all in a room together and we don't really know what we want to do, and we figure it out all together. And on Zoom, we had like small groups that we could discuss. Like we were interested in a similar genre. And oh, someone's saying something in the chat. Yes, the timeline, the story that's being woven right now. But yeah, so the first step is we all like kind of brainstorm what our topic is, and then we're in the same class with seniors who have finished their project. So we watch them pitch like, oh, here's my finished product and let's workshop it. And then we stand up, and this time it was on Zoom, and present like, this is the concept of what I'd like to spend the next 2 years researching and then writing about. And my project as of now is supposed to be a novel. I'm not sure if I'm not sure if I can be Vivien, but we'll see. But yeah, on creative activities, definitely that is a big one, like the capstone project. But something a really wise advisor, Cara Mae Brown, said to my incoming class, like at that first day, was CCS is kind of your portal into the rest of the university, because there's some just great opportunities for writing for a lot of things here at UCSB. So not every project you do, every creative thing will be through CCS. CCS is a way that you can find out about things like Word Magazine, or I did a program like in downtown Santa Barbara where I got to be a screenwriter and then give my script to a student filmmaker. And then they made it into a movie, and it was in the film festival, and that was just really cool. But that wasn't through CCS, but like I kind of found out about it through CCS. So yeah, there's just so many ways you can be creative at this school. And CCS is a great place to like have a home base.
So I love that you brought up Kara May, right, as one of the writing and lit advisors, and she's the program coordinator. But there's more than one advisor in the writing and lit program, which is awesome, and just adds like that much more variety to the experience. So wanted to ask about faculty advisors, because it's an important part of CCS. And to ask, how did you find the right faculty advisor to mentor you? And Michelle, I saw that you had signaled that you're very happy to start this question with. And I think as a senior, you probably have the most kind of, they say, what is it? Hindsight is 20/20. So can give us like the best full picture of what that faculty advisor relationship is like.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of mentioned this before, but I've basically had like a few faculty advisors, and it's depended on which projects I'm working on. So junior tutorial, in short, is something that you do when you're a junior working on your senior project, and you're kind of put in a group with an advisor to help you specifically for that. And because I'm a poet and that's part of my senior project, I was put with a poetry advisor, Bob Krett, who's amazing, and helped refine my poetry over the course of like 4 different quarters in very tiny little workshops. So that's great because he gets to know my work really personally. He knows how to offer feedback that's very like conducive to my work and my style, which I think is really helpful. That one-on-one relationship where they understand your work and you understand their work, and how they're offering you feedback is an amazing relationship, and I'm really grateful for that. And then I've also had sort of like a happenstance advisor for my creative nonfiction, because I decided to kind of merge my senior project, the essay part of it, with the RAB Writing Fellowship. So kind of getting a fellowship and my senior project done at the same time. And you get a mentor for that too. So I work with Trish Fancher, who's in the writing program. And, we meet all the time and talk about my essays. And it's just great because no matter what genre you work in, there's an advisor for you. And, in poetry, I also work with Rick Benjamin. In creative nonfiction, I work with Ellen Whittet too. Like there's a bunch of different people that I would consider my mentors. And all you have to do is really propose your project to them and say, hey, do you want to help me with this? Or does this interest you? And because Trish Fancher does a lot of like feminist rhetoric research and things like that, my project really suited what she was willing to help out students with. So it worked out that way. A lot of people just end up having like one main advisor. Your junior tutorial advisor, whoever that is, becomes your like classwork advisor, or your, what am I trying to say? They approve your schedules and things like that. But they may not even end up being the advisor you work with the most. So it really just depends on what you're doing, what genres you work in, and what genres your advisors work in.
Yeah, so kind of like Michelle, I feel like I have kind of a variety of mentors who've really worked with me throughout college thus far. My main, my main advisor for my project that I meet with her every week is Allison Williams, who's actually a lecturer in the writing department. So she's not even affiliated with CCS. And the way I found her is pretty ridiculous. I basically just wrote a proposal of my project. I knew what I wanted to do, that I wanted to start working on this as a second year, just because I knew it was going to be a lot of work. So I kind of got a little head start, just wanted to start working on it independently. And I basically wrote up a proposal for the work I want to accomplish, sent it to Kara May, who was my academic advisor at the time. And she forwarded that email to the entire English and writing department. And Allison, being the lovely person she is, read that proposal and emailed me and said, I want to work with you. So, I mean, that is something that I probably would have been terrified to do if I had known Karen May was going to forward it to literally everyone. But I'm so glad she did, because it made this wonderful relationship. And I think it's a real testament to there are people here who want to work with you, no matter how crazy your project is. I'm writing about pirates, okay? It's crazy. And people want to work with me. So don't be afraid to ask for help. But I also have amazing mentors like Karen May, and I have my academic advisor, which is Rebecca Brown. She's also incredible, and I meet with her regularly too. So you will have a really great support system, not just the advisor, but if you take the time to make connections, go to office hours, you will have like a really great scaffold to communicate with when you need support.
So I do not have a faculty advisor for my project as of now. So when I was a freshman, everyone's advisor was Karen May. And really, Karen May was there to like help us learn what the university is and like how to sign up for classes, how to choose classes at this giant university. And my sophomore year, this year, my advisor is now Michelle Gruey, who was our creative writing teacher like in freshman year. So we all met her for like the intro to creative writing class, where that was the first time we like heard each other's writing, did a workshop. And then she taught the class where we're supposed to figure out what we're gonna do in sophomore year. So she was like, we saw her on Zoom every week. We had to meet with her like 2 or 3 times that quarter and really just talk about, what do you want to do? What faculty might be like a good person for you to reach out to? And there's definitely a lot of people in my year like Vivien who in their sophomore year, in their freshman year, like, this is my novel. Some people come in and they're like, I've been working on this since 7th grade. I've rewritten it 4 times. This is my novel. And I don't have that. I changed my project like a couple of times during that. Like we pitch it once and then we pitch it again, and then it keeps shifting into a different project. And I'm sure it'll continue to shift as I go on. As of now, I've been told at the end of the like faculty evaluation, they were like, Bob Krett is teaching the fiction workshop. You should take it with Bob Krett because you say you want to write fiction. So if I continue to write fiction, then that's what I'm going to do. I'm excited because I love poetry as well. And I know that Bob Krett does both fiction and poetry. So if my work shifts in that way in his workshop, like I know he's going to be cool with that. Yeah, I also know Rick Benjamin, who's another poet here on campus, and I'm in a class with him right now. And Michelle talking about him made me think, oh, I should talk with him about my project. That's a good idea. So yeah, we're constantly like in community, like there's lots of faculty who are going to want to talk to you and help you. And if you're like shy and don't want to be like send out your thing and like actively email, like, because I've also like tried to email faculty and be like, hey, I'd love to come to your office hours and talk. And if you're terrified of that because you're a writer and you're an introvert, the CCS will like just place you in like a small group class with one of the CCS faculty. And yeah, I don't know. I'm the beginning of the journey at the end of the question.
I love that. But I just wanted to say that the thing that I've noticed is that all of you had like multiple names, right? Like, I think that's one of really the strengths of both our CCS community, that CCS is a portal to the rest of like faculty who like to work with students, but also ways to connect just sort of very broadly. And I've never met a CCS student who didn't leave effectively with a network of people who knew their work and knew what they wanted to do and wanted to see them succeed. So I think it's a real strength of our program. And along those lines of sort of network, I know we kind of have already answered a lot of this, but there's an opportunity for elaboration that you know, there are lots of different opportunities to meet role models at CCS. And we wanted to just sort of give our current students an opportunity to like speak about some of the really unique opportunities to hear from those role models in a smaller environment.
I think I said I'd take the lead on this question. And I really wanted to talk about a class that I took in my freshman year called The Writer's Life. And that was with Jervy Turvalon. And it was like 2 hours on a Friday. And just every time there was a different writer who he knew. And a bunch of them were CCS alumni. Some of them were like friends of CCS alumni who he knew, or like, oh, I worked at this publishing house, or now I'm blanking on the name, but the like LA like writers, there's some festivals he kept trying to get us to work at, but then it was shut down because of COVID. But he knew a lot of people through there. And every week there was a different writer who had a different journey and like a different way that writing was involved in their career. Some of them were teachers, some of them are freelance writers. And then we got to like hear their story and then ask them questions. Sometimes they brought their books. And that was just like a really cool opportunity. And it was all concentrated in one class. But I know we also have a bunch of like, when a writer comes and like talks through Letters and Sciences, like to the entire university, they're having a big talk. They're often invited to CCS and we get to sit like at a table with them with like 10 other people and just talk to them. I haven't been to as many of those because I was in like this class that was just it. But there's just so many opportunities to talk with like real writers from like all these different walks of life. Some who came here, some didn't, and see like, you want to write for your life, like how can you make that a realistic part of your career and your goals?
Yeah, what came to mind for me was the Sophomore Seminar or Colloquium, which is basically similar to what Chloe was saying about how people come and just like talk about their careers. That's a required class in the major, at least I think it still is. So it's really built into the major for you to meet people that are role models and that do a lot of different types of writing careers. Like I remember one of the first seminars that I had my freshman year was that this guy who made his entire career out of writing the labels for wine bottles. So like writing the like very poetic prose that like goes on a wine bottle, and that was his career. So just like it's a really good opportunity to show you the breadth of what you can do as a writer, and that you know you're not trapped in this like starving artist box. Like there are very legitimate careers that come out of this major and come out of this college, and so that was a really good opportunity.
Thanks for sharing all that. Oh, go ahead, Vivien. Sorry.
I honestly don't have that much to add. Yeah, there's lots of different people you can meet. Yeah, there's tons of people here that are on campus, off campus, connections, and you know, also the more you plug yourself in and go to conferences that someone might mention to you in CCS, but you know, isn't necessarily through even UCSB, but you can go to those conferences using different grants and funding. And you know, I got to go to a few this year because it was all virtual, so I could afford it without the plane tickets and stuff. And it's amazing. Like so many people are writing in this world, and I highly recommend even taking it beyond the university too, and using the money that you can get by writing some grant proposals to get to those, because it can be really formative.
I love that. So I want to ask, so, you know, not necessarily getting on a plane and flying off to a glamorous conference, but in terms of CCS classes, to give you guys a chance to talk about CCS classes specifically, and not just CCS classes, right? Like what are the classes in the other parts of the university where you guys, you know, do your work that's relevant? Because I think one of the things that, and especially for writing and lit students, is that there might be a wide range of places where they've been admitted as students, right? And not all of them might be as big as UCSB. And so what is, you know, is CCS like a small college? And, you know, I ask that question specifically because I think that's often the most direct form of that question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that for CCS, it's interesting because it kind of is like, at least for me, it was like a transformative thing because in the beginning, it feels very much like a small college because all of your classes are basically with the same people in your major and you get to know them really well and get to know their work, which is amazing. And then you kind of like leave the nest at some point and then the rest of the college just opens up to you. And that happens at different points for different people. But um, in the beginning, you're taking most of your classes in CCS. You're taking like intro to writing type of classes, intro to writing studies, and other kind of like basics to get you oriented with what the program is. And then after that, you kind of get to like spread your wings and go wherever you want onto campus. It's everywhere from environmental science to like just everywhere basically. And yeah, I lost my train of thought, but that's what I wanted to say about that. That's just, it's a transformative experience in that you can make it as small or as big as you want to. You can kind of stay within CCS and work pretty much within there if you want to. I've been one of those people who's kind of branched out of CCS like in my last couple of years and mostly done classes in the writing program, in the English and Comp Lit department, and in interdisciplinary studies. So it just depends on what you want to do.
I actually had an idea for a follow-up that I might ask all three of you to answer. Like, what's your favorite unique class that you've ever taken?
Mine's an easy answer. It's in the writing program, Writing 105C, which is creative nonfiction. It's a workshop class in the writing program where all you do is write essays. And it really changed the course of my senior project because primarily initially I thought it would just be a collection of poetry with some environmental research behind it. But I ended up like reorienting my entire project once I wrote an essay for that class that really like showed me what I wanted to be writing. So that's a really awesome class, and you get really tight knit as a class, and you learn your work with each other, and you workshop each other. And I think for a lot of people that I've talked to, that's been their favorite class as well.
Yeah, I can kind of start with the question about the size of CCS and then go into the favorite class question. So CCS is like a little family. Expect it to feel like you just got introduced to 27 cousins-ish and you're going to know them really well. And it's really awesome because there's something so special that I'd never experienced before about intimately knowing people's work and their writing and having a real respect for it, and them also having that respect for your work. It's just like a little artist community that I just totally thrive in. I love that I can come see my CCS friends, and even though I have a vastly different project and interest set than them, and I'm doing something totally different, like we both love writing. And it's really special to just be around people who love writing. So you're going to kind of have that little family, and then you're going to have the whole big college. If you're like me, you'll take a ton of stuff in English because I spent a lot of time just taking a bunch of lit classes. And it's like a totally different experience because you'll be in the giant lit class and then you'll be in the little tiny CCS class. I'm in one right now, a CCS class that's literally 6 people. So it's great. I highly recommend it. It kind of adds a great balance. I like both sometimes. So that's what I love about CCS, honestly, is that little community feeling. And then my favorite class is really hard. I've taken an excellent fiction workshop with Dr. Rebecca Brown. It was totally influential, and I highly recommend taking something with her. I've also taken a really excellent art history class with Professor Heather Bodemo. If you're interested in art history, highly recommend anything she teaches about Spain. Fascinating. And when I first started college, one of my first classes I ever took was a Women of Color Feminist Studies course, which just totally, I'm so glad I took it. Like if I had to choose one class to take in all of college, I think it would be that one because it just helped me see the world like so much better. And I love that about CCS, so that counted for one of my breadth requirements, and it checked a box, but it also just did so much more important work like in my life. So yes, highly recommend taking a variety of classes.
Yeah, so I'm going to give you a number. The largest CCS class I've ever been in, I think, was like 40 people. And that was like one of the like big intro classes. I think Michelle was talking about it earlier, like writers come and just like from all different parts of UCSB and talk about their research. And that's like the closest, it's like, that's the very beginning, it's like first quarter. And that's the closest CCS has to a lecture. And it's like a different person each time, and they're telling a story, reading their work. And even in that class, we have a smaller class where we just talk about what we heard in the other bigger class. And then the smallest CCS class, I mean, I think most of the workshops are like 15 people, and then junior tutorial would be like, could be like from 1 to 5 people. But that's much smaller than like biggest UCSB class is like 800 people. And it definitely is, it's a very interesting dynamic, especially when it was on campus. Like I would go to my 800 person lecture hall where I knew like no one. And then I would literally like walk like through the arbor to the CCS building, and like I knew everyone in that room, and we all had like our little community. And even in COVID, I definitely was not like best friends with all of the other sophomore writing and literature majors of my year. A lot of them I talked to like one time. But when we had to take one of our intro classes our sophomore year because COVID. And we made a group chat like right before the class started. And again, these are people I knew for like a little bit of my freshman year before we all had to go home. And we like had this like text community for the rest of the quarter where we like actually got to know each other and would like talk about what was happening in class. And looking back, that's kind of astounding. Like these 15 people who I like vaguely know, they do feel like cousins. It's not exactly like, oh, like this is my like best friends in the world, these 15 people. No, like they're my like cool cousins who I see at family like gatherings, and we all get along and we talk about family stuff, writing stuff. And then we move on and we have like our other friend groups or other parts of the university. So yeah, CCS is a little family. It's very nice. And favorite class is a hard one. But I think I'll go for like something that'll let us talk about interdisciplinariness, which is, so I'm going to say a CCS biology class, which was, and I think Michelle was in this with me, the ecology of food. And it was taught by one of the main CCS bio advisors. But there were a lot of writing and literature students there because we just read books about food. So there was a lot of biology, and there was also a lot of writing. And it was just this really cool mix of people from both of those majors and then from other majors. And again, even on Zoom, everyone's camera was on. We were all talking. We were all like genuinely interested in the books that we were reading. And then I like decided I was going to base my capstone project off that class. And then I changed my mind. But yeah, through CCS, we don't just have writing and lit. We can take any CCS class. There's like intro, like you could take intro to computer science through CCS for non-computer science majors. You could take interdisciplinary classes like that biology class. So I know I'm skipping ahead in the questions. We're supposed to talk about being interdisciplinary later, but that was my favorite class. It really was, because it got me thinking like, wow, I've really only written like short stories and poems, but there is like, you can, writing in creative nonfiction, writing in like journalism can still be so creative, but also like real and have facts and science and stuff in it. So yeah, that's that.
I love that you skipped ahead. Skip ahead all you want, guys. Like, you know, it's ultimately the goal is to have a conversation. So, you know, whatever order that happens in works for all of us. Just wanted to say, sort of our next question is about kind of work-life balance, right? And that our students, because these are students who are inherently passionate about what they do, often get involved in that passion in a variety of ways. So like you guys are talking about, like, oh, you know, all the literary magazines and the conferences and the grants and the, you know, you could write for the student newspaper, you could be part of this and part of that, and you could go to all the guest lectures and all that kind of thing. And that's all great, right? And a lot of that I think is fun and special, and it's a wonderful opportunity. But we also want to, you know, ask what maybe you do outside of writing and literature, right? Like, what else do you make time for? How do you strike that balance? How does that work for you?
I can answer this one first. So this is a great question. Something you'll notice if you come to CCS is that CCS kids take a lot of units, and like usually about 8 more than a LNS kid, it seems like on average. Depends. It depends on the type of person you are and you know your limits, but that is a little bit of a trend. And something that I've found this year, because I am a person who needs a lot of alone time. I need a lot of me time. Yes, and it's not expected. You don't have to take that much. But and in high school, I always felt really tired. Like I just felt dead all the time from taking all the classes. And something I have noticed when I have, especially this year, because I've just started saying yes to so many things, is that because I've now learned really how to prioritize my passions, it doesn't drain me as much. Like I'm doing a lot, but I'm really excited about it like all the time. And I'm even energized because like I'm getting to go outside and write a nature poem. And that's what I do in my free time, like that's kind of the things that make me really happy. So that's really special. But also there is something to be said for like, please hang out with friends and go to the beach. And one of my personal favorites that I did a lot freshman year was I just go sit by the lagoon alone because I have a little special connection with the lagoon for some reason. It's a little smelly, but it doesn't bother me anymore. But like if you love, like I love to watch the birds and it's just so refreshing. There's beautiful spots of nature on campus. Please take advantage of them. And you will have really sweet friends. Go hang out in the hub, go get some Panda Express. Like don't spend all your time doing work. And I think, focus on what you're really passionate about. Don't feel pressured to take a class that the great thing about CCS is you really don't have to take a class you don't want to take. So take the classes that make you excited so you never feel like you wake up full of dread. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, speaking to that a little bit, like I was never one of the CCS kids that took more than like 16 units, maybe at maximum, just because that's like, I just can't. And everyone's different, but like that's just not something that I mean, I had to take a couple, 20 like at some point, but I really tried to make sure I was doing that balance because I'm someone who can't do that much work at the same time. And also like one 4-unit class may not require the same amount of work as another 4-unit class. So also just understanding what the classes are going to require of you is important. And you'll get that sense more as you're going through your experience at college. But yeah, just like knowing that, just because it says a certain amount of units doesn't mean it's a certain amount of work. But something I found was that, picking things that also require you to get involved in the community. Like when I joined Word Magazine, it was because I loved living in Isla Vista. And I felt like living there and being there was really starting to like shape my personality and who I was. And so I joined Word Magazine because that's the whole mission of the magazine, is to bring out the highlight the arts and culture part of Isla Vista. And there's so much to do there and so much like artistic community and just stuff to do that has nothing to do with school. And I think that's, besides from partying, but there's a lot of stuff to do there. And it's literally like a whole community right next to your school that all of your friends live within a mile of you. Like it's a great place to be. You don't have to live in IB, but that's just something that I found myself doing a lot, was wanting to explore IB and to be out in the culture there, and getting to do something that I could like write on my resume, as well as actually being out in my community and enjoying being there. Like I had to write an article about the the garage band scene in IB. So literally for like 3 weeks, all I did was go to these garage shows and like interview the bands there that were all just like students at UCSB. But that was a really special experience because I think that's one thing that's just like to get yourself involved in who you live near, and that can mesh really well with your academic life. It doesn't have to be completely separate.
Yeah. So I think the question was, what do we do outside of writing, or like mental health? And I think one, like a really big transition that I think most CCS writing and lit people have is in high school, we write like for fun, for ourselves. Like maybe we get to take like a writing class or an English class, or like we have friends that we share writing with. And then suddenly you hit college and like, oh, like this thing that was my hobby is now like my school. It is now my thing that I like must dedicate time to. And that is challenging because there are going to be aspects of it that still seem super fun, like writing for a magazine, or like the parts that you like, you still love it, but then there's a point where, oh, there's a deadline, like people are going to see this. So I think it is really important to have things other than writing that you do. Definitely like the campus is a beautiful place to walk, so like taking that time outside. My freshman year, I also took a lot of classes through the rec cen, and I think they're starting to open it up again. I took like their hip hop class, which was a good time. And I really love to dance, and I definitely didn't like let myself do that as much as a freshman, and I'm starting to take more classes now on Zoom. I'm like, I should have been doing this the whole time. Just because I'm a writing major now doesn't mean I like give up all the other parts of my identity, which is important. And did I have something else to say about that? Units, take a normal amount. Ballroom dancing is a fun class. I want to take that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, if you decide to come to UCSB and you know SIR, and especially if you come to orientation, like Megan and I have lots of opinions that have been well informed by years of watching CCS students try to figure out their workload. So you have plenty of advisors who can talk you through like what's your workload every quarter, right? You get to meet with your advisor every quarter, and every quarter your advisor can say, you know, you handled last quarter really well. Do you want to push yourself? Or like, hey, maybe that didn't go so great. Like, let's chill out this quarter. You know, you've got all kinds of opportunities. You've got at least 3 quarters every year. The math on that always seems weird, but summer's a quarter. Yeah, you've got time. Our last question, I think, for now, just because I'm keeping an eye on time and I want to make sure we respect everyone's commitment, is to ask about what helped you choose UCSB and CCS. So when you applied to colleges and you were a high school student and you were thinking like, all right, what am I going to do? What helped you decide that CCS was the right place for you? And this can be a range of things. And I'm only bringing this up because I want to, but a number of people have mentioned the campus. And one of the things that I think about is that the class of 2025 doesn't get a chance to see what it's like, what the energy of campus is. And each campus has its own feel, right? So if that was something that was a factor for you, I just wanted to invite you to like weigh in on that. It doesn't just have to be that like it's really pretty, but what are the people like when you're on campus? Anyway, that's my one, you know, planting a seed. But if you guys had something else that drew you to UCSB, please share it with us.
I think for me, oh, sorry, Chloe, were you gonna go?
You go.
Okay. For me, it was, so my junior year of high school, I toured like a lot of California schools. And as soon as I sat down, this is gonna sound, but as soon as I sat down at Freebird's and Ivy with my dad to have lunch, and I just saw like, it was in the middle of like fall quarter or something. We saw like everyone riding their bike from campus and like just all this like energy and like hustle and bustle, but not in like an overwhelming way, where everyone just seemed really happy. And that's not to say that there's never any difficulty, but I think that of all the campuses that I visited and of all the energies that I felt at different campuses, I just loved how people were always smiling and like saying hi to each other. And even though it's like a big school to UC, like you felt like everyone kind of knew each other. I think part of that has to do with everyone living so close to each other in IV especially, and like you get to know your neighbors, things like that. And you see the same people everywhere, it feels like. And that's a really great thing for me because I think it just made me feel at home somewhere. And CCS is even a microcosm of that. And you have an even tighter connection there. So I think it had to do with like, you know, the community in IB, and then also being on campus. Like my first couple of quarters, I never wanted to leave campus. Like I just wanted to be on there all the time, just like hanging out in the grass or doing homework at the arbor or whatever. Like I just loved the weather is great. Obviously, I loved the energy of the people around me and stuff like that. So it was just the people that really attracted me to it.
I can go. This was very fresh. It feels like 2 seconds ago, because COVID just like made time an illusion. So I didn't look at any schools, like visit them until my senior year spring break when I already knew where I'd gotten into. So I went on like a little California road trip with my parents. And I think I went to Santa Cruz first, and then Santa Barbara, and then like a weird small college, Whittier, which isn't a UC, and then Riverside. And when at every campus, I was kind of waiting for that feeling. Like I was like, and I applied to 21 schools, which is a bad idea. And I was just waiting for this feeling like, oh, this is the right place. And when I got to UC Santa Barbara, I was just at Santa Cruz, which is beautiful, but in a very different, like isolated way. Like there's trees between everything and you can't see campus. And then just driving into campus, you can really see like where all the buildings are. Like you can see people walking and biking around. But I think what really did it is I went to visit CCS, and this was over spring break. So no one was there. But Kara May, our advisor, just happened to be like in the office. And I emailed her like a few weeks before, like, I'm visiting during this week. Could I meet you at some point? And I went to the front office. And I saw Megan. I was like, hi, I'm here to see Kara May. And she's like, who is this person? It's spring break. But Kara May was like, oh, no, yeah, like I'm here. Come in, let's talk. And she just gave me the whole spiel about like what the major is and broke down all the classes, which then I forgot again. But it was just, I really felt like they care about me here. Like there's a community, there's someone who's gonna like take their time to sit down and talk about like your journey and what you want to write. And the fact that the classes are so small, and like each year of writing and lit has like sometimes the interests are different, but sometimes like there's a bunch of fantasy writers all in one year, and then they're like, okay, like let's write like let's make a fantasy class because that's what people are interested in. So just to know that like what we care about is like heard on a higher up level in that way. And yeah, the community, the people. I was in like a group me chat of different like my year CCS, and just people were so friendly. They didn't even know each other and they were so friendly. And I feel like that really is UCSB.
Yeah, so I have kind of a funky story about how I chose this school. So I actually grew up in Santa Barbara. I'm at my family's home right now. So I never pictured myself going to the college that is 5 minutes from my house. I basically, got into a bunch of UCs. I was leaning UC. That I pretty much applied to like one private school early decision, didn't get in. It was a long shot, and then it was UCs. So I went to tour Berkeley. It was basically between here and Berkeley. And at Berkeley, they like throw you a parade, right? It's like fanfare and everyone's so excited to see you. And I'm in the Berkeley campus and I'm having all the emotions. Like I can see myself living here, And I went to learn about the creative writing minor because basically I was like, I'm going to college to write a book. That was my thought process. I want to write a book, and the only way I can figure out how to do it is to go to college. So I went to the creative writing booth, and the guy was like, oh yeah, we kind of do this like as a hobby. It's not really, and I don't know if this is still the vibe there. This was my 1 minute experience. So obviously don't judge the entirety of Berkeley off this, but it was just like, okay, like, it seemed like it was not super seriously taken, but I was like, okay, like they're throwing me a parade. It seems great. Then got in the car, drove home to my hometown, went to UCSB campus, and I was like, okay, here's the school I thought I'd never go to. But I got into the CCS program, which my parents were like, this is perfect for you. And I went, and Kara May was in one of the classrooms, and I sat down with her, and she's like, okay, like, what do you like to write? And I'm like, here's what I like to write. And she's like, okay, we're gonna make that happen. Like, you're gonna come here and you're gonna write and do whatever you want. And it was like, my doors were open. It was like somebody sees my work and wants to help me see it through, which is my number one goal in going to college. And so kind of when I had that experience, despite the fact that it was in my hometown and I wasn't going anywhere, it was like, I can't turn that down because that's what I want in life. And my love for the campus really came after I did go live in the dorms so I could be like immersed and stuff, which I'm glad I did, because then I did like end up totally loving the campus and the vibe and the students, and you know, but it doesn't have to be like, it can be that decision of like, if you're like me, it can just be like, this is what I want to pursue my passion first, because the bells and whistles will fade away if you have the Berkeley experience where someone's throwing a parade. And that's what my dad told me, like, the bells and whistles are going to fade. It's going to come down to, are you doing what you love to do? And if you love to write, this is where you want to be, I think, personally. So that's my spiel.
I love that spiel. If I could take all these little spiels and I could like put them in a little digestible box and like just toss it out the window at everybody, I totally would. So we've got 5 minutes left effectively. And before we get into like, you know, asking you guys if you have any questions, I just want to take a minute to say thank you to our panelists for being here. I genuinely appreciate your time. This is completely like a volunteer-based thing. So for those of you who aren't panelists, right, you know, if that factors into like, oh, wow, they like genuinely wanted to say this stuff so much that they were like, oh God, what could I do on a Monday afternoon? I could talk to prospective students. And like that really, I think, says something about CCS. The fact that I do this, one of these panels for each of our majors means that like each of our majors has enough students in it who are like, oh man, I want to for like an hour just talk about the college. And so like, I think that speaks to also like our community as a whole. You know, we had panels in the past earlier this month about, you know, student life and about college requirements and stuff. We've got the college one up on YouTube. I don't think the student life one is up there yet. We're working on it. A lot of panels all at once. But I just wanted to say, you know, thank you for being here and thank you for your time. And I genuinely appreciate listening to you guys. And, you know, it's one of the things that I miss. Like, I miss the interaction of like, we're sitting in our office, like doing stuff. And like students come by and they're like, oh man, like my pirate novel like had a breakthrough in this latest chapter. And we're like, oh, tell us about your pirate novel. So we miss this stuff. And we miss that environment and that community. And so it's a joy for me to be here too. So we've got these minutes left. I rambled for 2 of them. I'm sorry. But I just want to see if you guys have any questions. Feel free to unmute yourself, raise your hand in the participants tab, toss it in chat. You can get in touch with us by email too. So you can email me or Megan, you can email our student assistants through kind of our standard stuff, but also, you know, obviously KRMA has been willing to reach out to people in the past. So if you have questions, you know, feel free to hit that contact information up. So I'm rambling in part to buy you guys some time. Vivien volunteered her email too. But just to see, you know, if you have anything you want to ask before we head out and enjoy the rest of our day. Go ahead, Tia.
Hi, thank you for like answering all these questions. It's definitely helping me. I was just wondering if there's like a study abroad program that I can maybe participate in.
I'll give the short answer on that, and then I don't know if our panelists want to like weigh in with anything specific, but the short answer is yes, you can absolutely study abroad, like totally do it, especially like if you have an interest in another culture or you know language that informs your writing, then like you should roll into your advisor's office and be like, I have to study abroad, like my work won't survive without it, and like do it, right? And a lot of you know international programs, like when you get there, they have classes in the local literature and in the local writing, and like that's relevant to your major. So the short answer is yes, please do so. And especially if that's something that you know you want to do, then like all the better, because then that means you can plan for it and you can kind of integrate it into your structure and your major. There's a mention of you can get short-term travel funding through TURF. So like if you have a need to travel for your research, then that is an option. But also like, you know, as you have scholarships through UCSB, you can, if you do, you don't have to, but if you do, then going abroad works really well. And I will say that UCSB has a really incredible study abroad program. One of our sort of hidden perks is that the entire UC's study abroad program is based at UCSB. So like we have the best study abroad people on our campus, and they are enthusiastic to a fault. I used to tell students that you basically walk into their office and they like rappel down out of the ceilings and they're like, where do you want to go? And they want you to go there. So it's a lot of fun. I highly recommend studying abroad. You know, different students, it works out in different ways, but I think for you writing students, I think there's no reason not to if that's something you're interested in. That's a great question. Yeah, different students go lots of different places. Anything else that we can help with before the coach turns back into a pumpkin and we move on?
I did have one more question.
Go ahead.
What might a freshman year like look like? Like obviously I know it's gonna be really different with COVID, but I'm thinking about like housing and like the different classes that I'm gonna be taking. So I'm kind of curious of like maybe a general idea of what it might look like this year.
Can I ask you a follow-up question? Like, do you mean in terms of COVID, or do you mean like what does a normal year look like?
A normal year.
Okay. Because I'll just say they might look more similar than you might expect. Because I think the expectation will be that we're back on campus in fall. And you know, we'll all be wearing masks, I'm pretty sure, but definitely more back to normal than it's been for the past year. So your first year might look even more normal than Chloe's did. So I think you know, there's some positives along the way. I don't know if one of our panelists wants to just kind of summarize real quick. Go ahead, Michelle.
Just real quick, I would say like definitely try to live in the dorm. I lived in can't remember. Oh, Santa Catalina, which is off campus technically, but adjacent to Ivy and just a short bike ride from campus. It was great. There's also a little community there. So everywhere you go, there's different communities to be a part of, but definitely do student housing if you can. I think it's required for first years. And then, yeah, just the first year, you're going to basically be taking classes that introduce you to the major, introduce you to university life. There's a great program they're, I think, still doing called Freshman Seminars, where it's through interdisciplinary studies. You can take just seminars that are specifically for freshmen that are 1 quarter long, and you just go and learn about a topic that whatever the professor is passionate about. Mine was about art, but it ended up being kind of like I don't know, we just got to know about each other, and so it gives you a community there as well. So definitely take freshman seminars if you can.
And just a little note about dorming too, like, you know, look at the different dorms you want to live at. I suggest looking at location. I've found that every dorm has a different vibe, which I think is super interesting, but they totally do. So I lived in Manzanita, which is like quieter and it's like next to the lagoon. You have it's kind of separated from campus, so it's more of a walk. So if you know, just depending on like ability and stuff, you want to consider like how much can I walk every day. But you know, I loved Manzi. It's really naturey out there. And I also lived in Pendola, which was the Manzi CCS house, which came with all of its fun quirks. So if you want to be around CCS kids, I recommend that. If you want to have a broader community outside of CCS, that's really important to you. You will get plenty of CCS kids. So if you want to meet other friends, then, you know, Sandcat or wherever could be a really great option too. So you can do a little research or talk to me or talk to other people about what their dorm, Santa Rosa, what their dorm experience was like, and they can kind of give you the vibe of the different buildings if you want to kind of have an idea of what you might be getting into.
I'll say too that you know, there is CCS housing. It might be in Santa Rosa next year. That's currently kind of the direction that it seems to be moving in. And you know, some people choose not to live in CCS housing, and that's also totally valid, right? Wherever you live, hopefully it makes you happy. And so some people want to have, you know, roommates that aren't part of CCS just to have that kind of breath of fresh air. So there's no wrong answers. It's ultimately about what works for you. So I just want to say thank you. I'm going to stop the recording, I think.